It's Monday night in East Lansing. Come on in, gather around, gather around. We have a bunch of Michigan State fans gathering around already, ready to talk Michigan State sports. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. This is our second take. We had a little technical problem early on, got some assists from the viewers, from the listeners, and glad to hear from you guys. Got it straightened out now, as far as I can tell. We had a week off or so. Back at it now on a Monday night, talking Michigan State football, Michigan State basketball. We will be fielding 11 or 12 questions that were posted at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com. And we will be fielding those mailbag style. In the meantime, go ahead and give us some questions over in the chat area. In the meantime, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel here if you have not already. That helps us out quite a bit. Great to be back at it. Great to be talking Michigan State sports. Great to hear from the Untitled Beer Ranking Show. Hitting the tip jar with a sponsorship. Appreciate that. Thank you for that. And thank you to all the SpartanMag.com subscribers. I've been doing SpartanMag.com for many years. It keeps growing, and we're happy about that. Happy with the support that we get from you guys. So if you don't know anything about SpartanMag.com, go check it out. Corey Robinson doing a great job covering Michigan State football recruiting. He is our recruiting anchor at SpartanMag.com. Paul Konerdijk doing a great job. Had a great analysis of the Xavier Tillman news yesterday. Went in-depth, comprehensive. Paul, real great job with the basketball analysis on that one. Ohio Spartan doing a great job. Justin Thind. We haven't heard from Ricardo Cooney in a while. We'll get him back at it once we get back into press conference season. Hopefully that'll be coming up at some time this fall. But things are kind of tight these days with what's going to happen with college sports. You guys all know that. We'll delve into that a little bit tonight. You know, everybody knows the big news from the weekend. Xavier Tillman going pro. Aaron Henry coming back. What does that do for Michigan State basketball for next year? Well, Tillman was outstanding and irreplaceable in a lot of ways. His maturity, his intellect, slope of improvement, the way he worked on his game, great leader. And they'll miss that, but they'll miss his defense, his ability to call out defense, team defense, and his versatility on defense. Quick-footed, also physical strength. In terms of being able to guard a 5 like a Luka Garza or a stretch 4 like a Luka Garza or a 5 or Zion Williamson. He was the only guy in the country that guarded Zion Williamson effectively 2 seasons ago as a sophomore, helping Michigan State go to the Final Four. His ability to switch on a ball screen and guard a point guard for half a possession like he did against Michigan a couple of times with some big victories over the Wolverines. I mean, a guy that can guard a Luka Garza, Zion Williamson, switch onto a point guard in a pinch, rare. Izzo's really only had, I would say, only 2 guys that have really been able to do that, guard 1 through 5. I mean, I'm not saying that you can put Xavier Tillman on a shooting guard for 40 minutes, but in a pinch, he can switch and prevent penetration. I would say, in terms of having that foot quickness and the knowledge and the brawn, it's just Xavier Tillman and Andre Hudson are the only guys that have been able to do that for Izzo, and not many people have been able to do that nationwide. And they're going to miss Tillman. And if Tillman had been able to come back and develop that shooting range, he worked on it last year. He had a big, was it a 3-pointer against Duke in the Elite Eight as a sophomore? Has a good-looking shot. He was hoping, and Michigan State was hoping, that he would be able to be more of a perimeter threat last year and threaten opponents with the 3-point shot. He dabbled at it, worked at it. It wasn't quite there, so he didn't force it. He didn't go shot hunting. You know, he didn't go for volume scoring. He wasn't a chucker. He tested it out early in the year, shot some here and there. If someone left him open, he could make that shot. But it's not like he was going to be hunting for 3 or 4 3-point attempts per game. If he had made some shots early in the year, he may have become that later. But showed great basketball IQ and resolve. Well, resolve's not really the word, but great IQ and understanding of where he fit to not overdo the perimeter shot last year. But that part of his game is coming. And there's a question tonight in the mailbag about that. And that's something that's going to be a determining factor as to what kind of success he has at the pro level. Aaron Henry, I'm happy for him that he made a smart decision. A lot of people were concerned he was going to make a Cody White type of decision. Nothing against Cody, except I think a lot of us said at the time that was not going to be a good decision for him to go pro. I guess he was re-signed by the Chiefs. Or was it Lewerke that was re-signed by the Patriots? One of those two guys was waived, then re-signed. But anyway, Aaron Henry, I mean, a lot of people were advising him not to go. Eventually, thanks Hayden, it was Lewerke that was re-signed. Izzo had a heart-to-heart with Aaron Henry late last week. And maybe that had an impact. I don't know. But Aaron Henry had no business testing the waters. Good kid, strong kid. But he has not demonstrated yet that he's as good as he thinks he is. And it's good that he thinks he's good. That confidence is a great thing to have. But last year he needed to demonstrate some perimeter shooting. And at times in the preseason and in practice, he looked like a good shooter. And over the course of 30 games, that's enough time to show what your shooting is, I guess. But he had a few too many non-existent games and was inconsistent last year. Needs to demonstrate, if he wants to go pro, that he can stick it from the perimeter. Until then, he's not a professional commodity, in my opinion. If and when he shows he can shoot from the outside, combine that with a good frame and athleticism, then he'll be ready. But not yet. Smart to come back. That'll help the Spartans for next year. Let's get to the mailbag, go right to it. We can touch back on those basketball subjects later on if you want to, judging by whatever you've got with the questions over there in the chat area. Got to put on my readers. I'm getting old, people. I've been old. Not getting old. I've been old. Question number 1 from Alex in Los Angeles. He says, thanks as always for doing these. Thank you, Alex, for tuning in. What is my gut feeling on Mike Myslinski and the New Jersey boys? So Alex from Los Angeles wants to get right to football recruiting. I can do that. We can do that. I talked a little bit with Corey Robinson today, get a little bit of the latest on these guys. Corey has a great job recruiting. Anchor, SpartanMag.com. Michael Myslinski, he's the offensive lineman, center, about 6'3", 285 from Jacksonville, Bishop Kenny High School. Schools going after him have been Texas, Oregon, Louisville, Maryland, Iowa, Florida State, Michigan State. Michigan State looks like they're in the final two, Michigan State and Texas. And I cannot remember Michigan State and Texas ever going head-to-head for a recruit. I can't think that would ever be a winning proposition for Michigan State. Not very often. Maybe for someone in the Midwest, but Texas doesn't recruit up here at all. But Michigan State crossing paths with the Longhorns in the Sunshine State of Florida. Myslinski, underrated by Rivals.com. He just got his 3rd star, but his offer list is upper 3 stars. I know he's upper 3 stars with other recruiting services. I think he's ranked lower for Rivals.com because of his height. But Michigan State has had shorter offensive linemen in other years like Jack Allen and Travis Jackson that have done well. Myslinski reminds me of Travis Jackson, athletic center guard type of guy. So how did Michigan State make this happen with Myslinski? How are they in on this guy? How is Michigan State able to go toe-to-toe with Texas, the vaunted Texas Longhorns, for a guy from Florida? Now, I know Texas has not been recruiting as well as Texas fans would like to recruit. They just lost a couple of twin offensive linemen to Alabama, in-state guys, legacy guys. A couple of guys whose father had played at Texas. They lost them to Alabama, and that fan base is getting really... I'm not saying the seat is hot with Herman. Last year was supposed to be a huge breakthrough season after they beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl the year before. Didn't happen. There's been a long list of coaches at Texas that have flamed out after 3 or 4 years, especially recently. So Native's getting a little bit restless there. But Texas is still Texas. I mean, they've got everything down there, right? Everything. In a climate that's probably more suitable to Mr. Myslinski. So how did Michigan State get in there? A lot of you already know this, but Myslinski's father, Tom Myslinski, is the strength coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he was strength coach of the Jaguars when Mel Tucker was there as an assistant coach and also as an interim head coach. And if you listen to people around the Jaguars that were with Tucker at the time, his short stint as interim coach for the Jaguars, he impressed a lot of people during that short time and made a lot of long-term friends, but impressed a lot of people. Tom Myslinski was one of them. He is still strength coach of the Jaguars. So, also, one of Myslinski's former strength assistant coaches, Taylor Porter, he was assistant strength coach for the Jaguars, is now an assistant strength coach with the Spartans. So Taylor Porter is up here now using a lot of the Tom Myslinski things, concepts under Michigan State's new strength staff, Novak and those guys. So Tom Myslinski, Mike Myslinski's dad. Tom played offensive lineman for Tennessee, played in the NFL for a while. He's a strength coach now. So as a strength coach, you know that he puts great emphasis on strength and conditioning. Your build as you go along, as you progress from being a teenager through your college years. So as a strength coach, he's going to want somebody overseeing his son that has a lot of the same philosophies that he has about strength and conditioning. And he knows Tucker well, so that's how Michigan State got their foot in the door. In the meantime, you're asking me, Alex, what's my gut feeling? I think Michigan State's got a shot here. They're in the final two. That's good. He was on campus touring a couple of weeks ago. Beating Texas for a recruit, I'm going to have to say I'll believe that one when I see it. Because I think Mike Myslinski is impressed with Texas. Who wouldn't be? A couple of great choices, Michigan State and Texas, I'll tell you that. In terms of nice campuses and other things. But I'll believe that one when I see it. Gut feeling, I don't know. Mike Myslinski's been close to the vest lately, understandably, as his nearing a decision, from what I understand. Corey Robinson's done a great job covering his recruitment. Flip a coin on that one, I would say. And it would be nice for Michigan State if they got that one. Michigan State's had a little bit of a drought in recruiting. They could use that one. In New Jersey, Michigan State going after lineman Gino Vandemark from Montvale, New Jersey, and running back Audric Estime. So you're asking what's the latest or the gut feel. Now, those guys are supposed to be visiting. They're planning to visit Michigan State the weekend of August. Not the weekend, but yeah, it is a weekend of August 15th. And Michigan State's current commitment from New Jersey, Kevin Wigginton, offensive lineman. Corey Robinson tells me that Wigginton will be on campus at Michigan State the weekend of August 15th to 17th. So those guys tentatively planning to have a trip to Michigan State coinciding with Kevin Wigginton being on campus. That would not hurt. Ethan Boyd will also be around, offensive line commitment from Michigan State from East Lansing. Michigan State was hoping that Andrell Anthony would be there also to help receive them, but Boyd will be there. Vandemark, he's a national top 250 guy. His top six, Michigan State, Rutgers, Nebraska, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Arizona State, number 5 player in New Jersey. His grandfather played at Michigan State in the 1960s, Alan Vandemark. Need to do a little bit more research on that one. That's an interesting angle we need to look into. Rutgers hired Vandemark's high school coach to be the running backs coach. So Rutgers is doing a good job recruiting right now. Schiano's back in the saddle, trying to put a fence around New Jersey. Everything he did previously as coach of New Jersey was about keeping the coach of Rutgers was about keeping the New Jersey kids home. And he's going guns blazing, trying to keep these guys in state. And Rutgers is off to a pretty good start with recruiting. He was hired back in December, so he's been at it longer, has had more face-to-face meetings with recruits. Tucker's been having to recruit over a screen from the beginning. And it's one thing to get a foot in the door doing it that way and impress some people that way, but in terms of closing and building a relationship to the next level to get some of these recruits that Michigan State's been missing on, it's been difficult. Of course, Michigan State's biggest commitment at this point, arguably, is Hampton Faye, the quarterback from Texas. What's the outlier there? The outlier there is Hampton Faye was able to come and visit campus during that short period of on-campus visits prior to the lockdown. There was, about 7 or 8 days when players could visit. His spring break in high school coincided with that, came up, loved it, knew the coaches from when they recruited him at Colorado. He's their guy. He's committed. And Hampton Faye looks like an excellent quarterback prospect. All these other ones, some have committed that have not been on campus yet, including Wigginton, I think. He's not been on campus yet. When he's here the weekend of August 15th, that'll be his first time. So you're asking me for what was your question? gut feeling. Flip a coin with Myslinski. I'm going to say Michigan State gets one of the New Jersey guys. One of them. But still, I got to see it to believe it. And this staff is good. This staff is a good recruiting staff, but there's only so much you can do over a screen. Question number 2 from MSU Polo from Rockford, Michigan. He says, Jim, one football question and one basketball question. Football, how would you rank the flip chances in order of likelihood between Andrell Anthony, Jamari Budden, Jalen Reed, and Caleb Banks? So he's asking what are the chances Michigan State could flip those guys, those 4 of each. Committed to different schools. Andrell Anthony committed to Michigan this week. Jamari Budden and Jalen Reed. A couple of Detroit area guys have committed to Penn State. One's a safety, one's a linebacker. And then Caleb Banks is a defensive end from Southfield A&T, committed to Arizona State back in April. I've not heard any rumblings about Michigan State being possibly looking to flip Banks, but I talked to Corey Robinson about that a little bit, and he says he wouldn't close the door on the possibility, but no rumblings at this point. So you want me to rank the likelihood? Andrell Anthony, I don't think there's much of a likelihood there. Michigan State likes him, of course, but flipping somebody that's gone to Michigan, for Michigan State to take a guy that committed to Michigan, that'd be really difficult. Michigan does not like to lose headlines. They do not like to lose press conferences. They are much better at losing football games. Now, I know they've won a lot of football games dating back to the 1750s when the ball was round. That's when they did most of their winning, but not done a lot since cable television was invented. But they're always strong, and they recruit real well, and he's part of that. But they're not. I don't think Michigan would allow the chance to lose that headline in that press conference. They've already won that press conference. They're going to keep it that way. Has anyone ever decommitted from Michigan to Michigan State? I was talking to Big Moobie about this. He mentioned Greg Cooper. You remember William Greg Cooper? But I think that there was a delay qualifying there. And he went all the way back to 1994 when Carl Reeves, but I don't think Carl Reeves ever committed to Michigan. He was from Oxford, Michigan, and he had to sit out as a non-qualifier way back at the end of the Perlis era. But there've not been many chances when Michigan State has really had a chance or attempted to flip anybody. They continued to work on Ambry Thomas, I think, but that one didn't go Michigan State's way. Of those 4, maybe Caleb Banks, because Arizona State is so far away, but I don't know for sure that Michigan State's going to go after him. Jamari Budden would seem like the most likely. I think he was the closest to picking Michigan State. I'm not sure how hard Michigan State went after Caleb Banks, but Budden, good, strong linebacker, but he likes Penn State, so that one's going to be hard to do. Jalen Reed, there's been some talk about Michigan State not wanting to believe that one is over. But a lot of these flips, I think that recruiting momentum has a lot to do with these things, your ability to flip somebody. If Michigan State had gotten Budden, maybe they would have had a better chance to get Anthony. Then maybe you've got a better chance to flip Jalen Reed. I mean, there's a domino effect with this stuff. Those of you that have watched it a long time, I've covered it a long time, these things happen that way. They happen in flurries. But none of those 4, those 4, you can keep an eye on it, but I wouldn't hold my breath necessarily with any of them. If there is a football season this fall in the state of Michigan, high school, and Caleb Banks tears it up, maybe you could get a visit out of him. Maybe that one could get dislodged a little bit, but a lot of things would have to happen between then and now for that to take place. Polo also asks, in basketball, is there impending fire to the smoke that Jaden Aikens may be committing this week? So there is smoke that Jaden Aikens, the fine athletic guard from Farmington, Michigan, now he's at Ypsilanti Academy he's going to be there with Imani Bates. There's smoke, some rumors that he might be committing to Michigan State. There was a lot of smoke back about 5 weeks ago that he was going to commit to Michigan State. Didn't happen. He's asking, is there fire to it? Is it going to happen? I've heard about the smoke. We'll have to wait and see. I agree with Paul Konadike on this one. This recruitment reminds me a little bit of Rocket Watts. A lot of the same I don't want to say red tape, but a lot of the same politicking going on. I think he wants to be a Spartan. When's it going to happen? We'll have to wait and see. Excellent athlete, great talent, shooter, finisher around the rim at 6'3". He could go to Michigan State, work on that decision-making part of the game, become a complete guard, play with Imani Bates probably, Max Christie. Michigan State recruiting at a high level in basketball right now. I do think Aikens is going to be the next one. Will it happen this week? Yeah, there's smoke. Will fire happen this week? Could happen. Wouldn't shock me. But like Konendijk said, wouldn't shock me if, there's still more chapters to go. You may remember Watts was on again, off again, committed, then didn't sign in November. And that one was feeling kind of strange all through the winter, but he went ahead and signed with Michigan State. And his career's off to a good start with the Spartans right now. Question number 3, VC1 from Novi, Michigan, says, any word on how summer workouts have been going for Joshua Langford? Josh Langford. Ensemble Fly Shop. They are not a sponsor, but it's located right off of I-75 in beautiful Grayling, Michigan. Joshua Langford. Ramiro, my man, from Denver, Colorado, in the tip jar sponsorship, personal sponsorship from Don Ramiro. Appreciate that, Prez. Good to have you back 2 weeks ago. Great to hear from you. I got a little fired up a couple weeks ago when you were back in the lineup. Got a little emotional. Haven't heard from you in a long time. Good to have you back. All right, let's see. Prez, that's Prez. He was a poster, one of the original posters, SpartanMag.com, going back years and years. It's good to have him back. All right, so Joshua Langford. I asked around a little bit about that, and what I've heard is that he is working out on a limited basis, and he's coming along pretty good. That's what I'm hearing. So I'm sensing some cautious optimism over there in the Breslin Center. He has been working out. I was trying to find out if he was going full go up and down the court. I don't think that's the case right now. Nothing full court up and down the court. Well, I don't know that for a fact. I'm just hearing he's working out on a limited basis, and he's coming along pretty good. So leave it at that for now. Langford, you put him in the starting lineup. I mean, you're going to have Rocket Watts starting at point guard. Aaron Henry's back, a stronger version of Henry. You got to hope that Henry's shot will be better, more consistent. Look for his offense a little more. Gabe Brown on one wing and Josh Langford coming off the bench. Any chance you get the Josh Langford of 20 months ago that could score 16 a game? I don't know. I kind of doubt it. He's had injury problems his whole career. He's been a slow healer. You know that. Even his freshman year, remember, he couldn't quite stride comfortably. He had hamstring issues. So I would expect more of a watered-down version of Langford, just a guess, reminding me a little bit of who was the dude for Iowa back in like the mid-90s. He's a commentator on the Big Ten Network. Was excellent as a freshman and sophomore. Injury came back. He might have played his 6th year. Kind of a stretch 4 before the term stretch 4 existed. Kind of a bulky 6'8" shooting guy. Come on, who's the guy? Big Ten Network. Anyway, he came back and was effective, but was never quite his full self. Or, no, not Ethan Happ. The guy for Iowa, going back to the early 90s. Mid-90s. Michigan State recruited him. Heathcote recruited him. And Michigan State took Garavaglia instead. Michigan State was going to take Garavaglia or this guy. And the way I heard it, Michigan State was going to take whoever committed first. Garavaglia committed first. Come on. He's Iowa. He's like a stretch 4. Anyway. I could Google it, but I'm not going to. Someone will guess it. Yeah, Jess Settles. Thanks, Mr. Boneman. Jess Settles. Thank you. So, yeah, Jess Settles, but prior to a game one time, he went up to Heathcote during shoot-arounds and stuff and said to Heathcote, you know what? A couple things happen a little differently. I might be suiting up for your team right now. And Judd's like, yeah, don't remind me. Garavaglia had some good times at Michigan State, though. But Settles was good, then injured, and came back a lot of heart, but was never quite what he was or what he was heading toward becoming as a young player. Not unlike the dude from Purdue. Who's the dude from Purdue that got hurt and came back? Dude, I can't. I'm not in mid-season form. He's also a Big Ten Network commentator. Anyway, I think Langford could be that type of guy. Never quite reaches what he was, but he could help. Yeah, Robbie Hummel. Thanks, Hayden. Check out the small brain on Comparoni. Jeez. What do you think, Shadnoy? I need to take a walk, get a drink or something. That might help. Anyway, Chad in Roscommon, Michigan from up north. We like to get those posts, those questions from up north. Roscommon, located just a few miles south of beautiful Grayling, Michigan. On the edge of the Huron Forest, I think. Or right in the middle of it. Is it the Huron Forest or the Manistee National Forest? I think it's the Huron. Anyway, Chad in Roscommon. He says, which wide receivers would we keep an eye on? Should we keep an eye on for now that Anthony is off the table? Talking recruiting again. I had an article about this the night that Anthony committed to Michigan and focused a little bit on a guy named Corey Palmer from Camden, New Jersey. Played his junior season at Bradenton IMG down in Florida. Did well down there. Now he's moved back to Camden, New Jersey. Camden High School, I think it is. And his mother wants him back closer to home because COVID was really spiking in Florida. His mom wanted him back closer to home. He's back in Camden now. 6'1", 180. Physically strong wide receiver. Kind of a long strider with that physical strength. Deceptive speed. Being 6'1", put together pretty well. Long strider, deceptive speed. All of those things remind me of a young Benny Fowler. I'm not saying he's going to become an NFL guy like Benny Fowler, but he looks like a Benny Fowler type of athlete. Now, Benny Fowler did not play wide receiver in high school. He was a single-wing quarterback. But I did see Benny Fowler at Michigan State's camp prior to his senior year. Showed up, played wide receiver, and nobody knew who he was. And they're like, who the hell is that dude with the gold helmet? Because Michigan State at that time had a commitment from Donald Spencer, who was a 4-star wide receiver from Ypsilanti. Later on, Spencer fell to 3 stars. Spencer was pretty good. Came in with some accolades, but he was at camp with Fowler, and Fowler was better than Spencer at Michigan State's camp. Michigan State had no choice but to offer him. Michigan State offered him. He went back to high school, played the single wing, was pretty good, came to Michigan State, had to learn some things about receiving because he was a body catcher for a long time into his career. You remember Benny Fowler kept getting better, ended up being a standout player for the Rose Bowl team, NFL, Super Bowl. Anyway, Corey Palmer, physically, similar type of athlete, standout wide receiver at the high school level, going back to New Jersey. Michigan State likes him, but there's competition there. Rutgers all over him. Michigan State versus Schiano. It's happening a lot in recruiting. Schiano trying to fend off everybody in the state of New Jersey. He's got his work cut out for him. Doing a pretty good job so far. But Michigan State more aggressive in New Jersey than I ever remember Michigan State being in New Jersey, which I think is a good thing. And how about Brad Fashenko? I just broke my bell ringer there. Fashenko, big sponsorship, personal sponsorship. Thanks to Brad, Don Ramiro, Untitled Beer Ranking Show. Appreciate those personal sponsorships. SpartanMag.com. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, Michigan State busy in New Jersey. I think that's good. I'm like, why so late to the party? But I tell you what, some of these guys, they've got Wigginton, Audric Estime, Vandemark, maybe Palmer. Michigan State knocks on the door. These guys, okay, they want to take a look. That wouldn't have been the case as much 15 years ago. Rutgers being in the Big Ten does not hurt. Those guys that grow up football players in the state of New Jersey, I know college football is not a big deal in New Jersey. I know that, but it's still a deal. People are aware of it. And if you grow up a high school football player, a prospect who wants to play in college, what are you doing? You're watching college football on TV probably when you're 14, 15, 16, 17. Who are you going to watch? Rutgers probably, right? You might have the Big Ten Network. I don't know. But Michigan State in the same division as Rutgers is on the radar in New Jersey. They're on TV. They're in the newspapers. Not that people read newspapers anymore. Well, they do. I do. I love newspapers. But that doesn't have as big of an impact on recruits. But I think that Michigan State versus Rutgers for the last several years has planted some seeds. And now Tucker and his staff are going into New Jersey more aggressively than D'Antonio did. And I think there are players there that Michigan State can get. Are they going to go there and beat Penn State for the best player in New Jersey? Maybe not. They're going to go there and beat Michigan for some of the best in New Jersey? Maybe not. But some of these other guys that can, have a high ceiling and become excellent players? Yeah. What was the guy's name? Rashard Casey? Rashard Casey. Remember him, the quarterback? Hoboken, New Jersey. He was a 5-star. Well, he's a blue chipper. They didn't have 5 stars back then. Saban went after him hard around 1996-97. Michigan State, Penn State, Michigan State, Penn State. Michigan State came in second for that one. Terrell Dortch was from New Jersey, I think. So Michigan, Saban delved into New Jersey a little bit. That was before Rutgers was in the Big Ten. Now that Rutgers is in the Big Ten, Michigan State's on the radar. I think Michigan State has a future recruiting in the Garden State. Let me go over here and check out some questions in the live area. Actually, what I'm going to do is take one more question. Okay. Also, another offensive line, or another wide receiver to look at. Corey Robinson is telling me about T.J. Huggins out of Miami Killian High School, 6'2", 170. Huggins has offers from Michigan State, Miami, Pittsburgh, Indiana, and others. I've not looked at film of Huggins yet. All right. So I've got to send out a tweet here. And I'm kind of getting a little bit. Here we go. Sorry for the dead air. Apologize for the dead air, but it helps us get a little bit more of just get a little bit more of a crowd here. Get a little bit more of the word out that we're here talking Michigan State sports on a Monday night in East Lansing, Michigan. Appreciate all you guys stopping by. We've been going for about 30 minutes already. Okay, good. I thought maybe we'd gone longer than that. I'd like to keep it shorter. I say that all the time. I want to keep it shorter. Never quite do. I'd like to do this more than once a week. Haven't nailed that one down yet, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Jeremy in Hazlitt says, he's got football question. Does no season hurt Mel Tucker more this year for the long term, or does a season with limited practice set him back more? No season hurt more or limited practice? I'm not sure the difference there. I posted this on the bunker a couple days ago. We all want to see college football this fall, right? We all want to see college football. But, Michigan State, they're supposed to return to workouts on Wednesday. That will conclude the 14-day self-quarantine. And Michigan State sent out a press release today. I should have rechecked that. But they going to practice on Wednesday. Camp is supposed to start on Friday. Mel Tucker's been the coach since February. He has not been on the practice field with these players and footballs once. And the rest of the country will finish 2 weeks of enhanced summer workouts on Wednesday or Thursday. I think maybe Wednesday, maybe Thursday. That's the 2-week period that the NCAA granted to football programs to make up for losing spring practice. So all these other programs on the field for two weeks with footballs for 1 hour a day, plus more strength training, enhanced workouts, a semblance of a spring practice, not a complete spring practice because they're not in pads, they're not scrimmaging, so it's not completely like spring. But valuable practice time. And Michigan State didn't get that practice time. They didn't get spring practice. Northwestern had 7 or 8 sessions of spring drills, and they've been working for 2 weeks. Michigan State is supposed to open against Northwestern. Now, that's not going to happen. They're going to change the schedule. But Michigan State is behind, people. They can't get on the field through no fault of their own. And it's August. They're supposed to be playing football in 4 weeks. Of course, we know that preseason's been canceled. Maybe it'll be late September if there's football at all. Still, other teams will continue to practice. Michigan State is laps behind these programs. Those teams will keep working. Michigan State will keep working. And closing that gap, I don't know how you ever close it this season. We all want to see football, but if it doesn't happen, I think that could be to Michigan State's benefit if you believe, hey, if Michigan State played 10 games this year against Big Ten competition, I'm telling you the likelihood of going 3-7 is possible. And if you're Mel Tucker and you want to recruit with a 3-7 record next spring, you'd be better off recruiting at a 0-0 record. We all want to see football. I hope it happens. Like I posted on the board a couple days ago, if you told me right now that they'd shut it down, but they would allow teams to continue to work out and practice, have a month of practice in pads, put a bubble around your program, practice, maybe even have a green-white game in October in pads, no fans. If you told me you could do that right now, I'm not saying right now I would take it, but I'm getting to that point. I'm getting to that point where that might be better. Give Michigan State a chance to catch up with these others and give Mel Tucker a true full recruiting circuit, recruiting calendar year with a 0-0 record, a recruiting cycle. That's the word I was looking for, is a full cycle. Because usually when there's a new football coach, they're hired in December and they quickly put together a recruiting class for February. And that's their first recruiting class, 2 months in. And then they have a 0-0 record. They get spring practice, have visitors. They get to strut around like they're the new coach, the new energetic guy. Get all that positive vibe going. Summer camps, still 0-0. And that second class, you begin recruiting the second class without ever having lost a game. So you still have that honeymoon momentum. Mel Tucker's not getting that honeymoon momentum. Year 2, I'm pretty sure that was, I got to look this up. I keep saying it, but I need to look it up. Year 2 was the year Nick Saban went out and got Cedric Irvin, Gary Scott, Robert Smith. 0-0. That first year, he quickly put together a pretty good class. Courtney Ledyard, Bill Burke, a few others. But it was the next year when he had like a top 22 class. I think Lemming might have had him 21 or something like that. Built on 0-0 honeymoon momentum. Well, Mel Tucker didn't get that first class in December, so this is his first class, but it's really the period in which he's going after the Cedric Irvin class. But didn't get spring practice, didn't get the summer camp season, and may never get that 0-0 face-to-face unless the season gets canceled. Then his 0-0 honeymoon momentum recruiting cycle will be next spring. And I know a lot of you are like, man, that's too far away. I can't go without football for the fall, but I'm telling you, it might be better for Michigan State if it turns out that way. None of us wanted to see that, but long term, it might be better. And I know the fortunes of Michigan State football are not the most important subject in college sports today or society in general, of course. But I remember when the lockdown and the pandemic happened back in March, and we lost the NCAA tournament, and it's pretty emotional around our board, right? It's pretty emotional. People upset about what's going to happen with sports. And I posted at the time, I'm like, hey, it's going to be Thanksgiving before you know it. Now, if you're 25 years old, maybe not. But if you're my age, I mean, 6 months goes by like that. March and April and May, to me, were probably April and May were probably the 2 fastest months of my life. Just because it was Groundhog Day, same stuff every day. We were over at SpartanMag.com. We were working, had work to do. But, man, those 2 months just flew by. Now it's August. No one wants to see it, but if that happens, I'm hoping they can at least continue to practice. I don't know if the NCAA or the Big Ten would allow that. Can they justify shutting down a season, but then going ahead with practice? I, for one, would like to see it. And I'd like to see a green-white game on the Big Ten Network, even if they don't let us go. Work on the program. Turn Mel Tucker loose next spring if things have calmed down. Might sound like a strange opinion, but that's where I am today on all that stuff. Old Tuck, the bell cow. $1.99 discount sponsorship. No, man, I'm joking. Appreciate it. Every time, old Tuck. Way to be. All right, I'm late getting to some of your questions here in the chat area. I lost it. I'm going to go back and find it. As far as, other news going on, some heavy news going on with the Indiana Hoosiers program. Brady Feeney, an incoming offensive lineman from St. Louis, hospitalized due to complications with COVID-19. His mother posted it, I think, on Facebook, saying that he was having trouble breathing. And now she said, quote, "We are dealing with possible heart issues," unquote. This was something I talked about on the message board a couple days ago also. I was in denial. I don't know. I'm biased. I'd like to see college football because that's the business I'm in. And I was kind of getting to the point where I was saying, okay, the players want to play. Athletic departments want to keep cash flow going, of course. For better or worse, ethically or not, they want that. And college football players are a demographic least impacted by COVID-19. Maybe children less so, but the flu, influenza is more of a threat to those two groups than COVID is so far, from, if you'll believe the stats and the reports. I was foolish enough to say that, thinking, well, these players, they want to play. They're not affected by this as much as others. If they want to play, let them play. If others don't want to play, they don't have to. They can stay on scholarship. And college athletic departments want to make money off the enterprise, connect the dots. I think they're going to play. And I thought that Major League Baseball would go off well, NBA and NHL would go off well, NFL would begin to go off well, and then college football would just kind of get on those coattails and begin in late September. Well, Major League Baseball has not gone off well. NBA and NHL have. NFL facing a lot of stumbling blocks before they get out of the gates. Then came that report last week based on a study out of Germany. I posted it on the message board, dealing with a lot of cases of people that have recovered since last spring and heart issues they're encountering, heart muscle issues, somewhat prevalent, to the point made me pause and say, okay, I can't act like COVID-19 is just like chicken pox to 19-year-old athletes. When that report came out about possible heart problems, then it's like, okay, maybe they should just shut it down. D-Pen, $4.99 with sponsorship. Appreciate D-Pen. Thanks a lot, man. So I was thinking maybe they should just shut it down, buy more time, and I'm not an expert at all on these things. So I apologize if you guys don't want to hear about this, but this relates back to football. Maybe they should shut it down. Then I heard this news today about this kid for Indiana. He's 6'4", 284 offensive lineman, incoming freshman. Been battling the virus for 14 days in the hospital, now potential heart issues. I'm wondering if that might be something very sobering for all of us that follow anything, let alone sports. But I'm wondering if on the back channels, these college athletic directors and the Big Ten commissioner, if they talked about that today. If they didn't talk about it today, they definitely will tomorrow. And I'm wondering if something like the situation with Brady Feeney is something that could get the plug pulled on things right now, in terms of just saying, you know what, it's not worth it, let's just shut it down. I'm wondering if that might be the case. As far as Michigan State goes, they're supposed to begin practicing again on Wednesday, camp on Friday, but I've heard there's other things going on, and I wonder if the other things relate to this with Brady Feeney. Also, I can tell you right now that I've heard that one Michigan State player is probably going to opt out and not play. And I don't know who it is, but I'm hearing that it's someone that you'll know, and it's someone that's been a starter. And Jordan Reed was talking about that, some of his misgivings a couple weeks ago, but that's not the name I'm hearing. I'm not hearing a name, but I'm not hearing that it's in his position. Anyway, You can look for that. I think you're going to see some more players opting out around the Big Ten, and I think you're going to see Big Ten players put forth a list of not demands, but things they would like to see. I don't know if it's a / boycott like the Pac-12, but something similar to what the Pac-12 players did. Big Ten players, look for that to come out in the coming days also. So this isn't going away, but Michigan State continues to recruit. That's the way college football is. Perpetually putting together your roster, building your roster. That's where Michigan State football is right now. And at SpartanMag.com, we will continue to cover it. We'll continue to do these podcasts as well. We appreciate all you guys checking in and being Spartan Maggers. All right, I'm late getting over here to your questions. I apologize for that. I finally got it up now. Let's take a look at it. What did I do with my readers? What did Mr. Magoo do with his readers? Here we go. All right, we had the sound problems early on. Got that fixed. All right, Untitled Beer Ranking Show asks, call it, Jim. Aikens commit to Michigan State and when? Sorry I'm so late getting to this. The idea is if a sponsorship comes in with a question, I go right to that question. Sorry it took this long. Untitled Beer Ranking Show guy, but I'm hoping you're enjoying some mead out of, is it St. Ambrose Distillery from Beulah, Michigan. Check it out. I recommend the John Lemon. Anyway, call it. He says, Aikens commits to Michigan State when? I think he'll commit to Michigan State. I thought it was going to happen 5 weeks ago. Could happen this week. When? You know, there's all that smoke about this week. Maybe Wednesday. If Wednesday comes and goes, then I'll reduce it. I might call it a light yellow right now for Wednesday. Wait and see. All right, here we go. Mr. Bone Man says, we've been waiting. Good. Glad you're with us. Good. All right, MSU fan number 1 sounds good. I mean, Drippy, do you think Langford or Hogard starts at the 2 in the first game? I think Henry and Gabe Brown start together. I know that's a tall backcourt, but Henry, I think he's a good enough ball handler. Hogard, Langford. If he's healthy, it might be him. But Izzo would probably want to bring him along slowly. You're a veteran. Let's go with Gabe Brown. So I don't think either of them start in game 1. Brian V says, X is a huge loss. It will be felt, but happy for him. He's a great Spartan, and he'll have a tremendous NBA career. I agree with most of that. Tremendous NBA career. Any NBA career is a tremendous career because those guys get paid handsomely, right? I agree. He'll be missed. Good one. Mr. Bone Man says, I will miss X, but that means others need to step up. That's true. Hayden Fisher, XFL was just bought out by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson today. Expect to see Cody White there next season. I agree. Brian V says, Henry needs that consistent mid-range jumper. Yes, he does. And a long-range jumper, too. Derek from Harper Woods says, who are the front runners for the offensive line spots? Offensive line, A.J. Curry at left tackle. I think he's going to be pretty good. He was good at pass protection last year. Needs to improve his run blocking. I think he will. Matt Allen at center, Kevin Jarvis at right guard, Jordan Reed at right tackle. Chance that Kevin Jarvis could become a tackle, maybe. Chance he could go to tackle and bump Jordan Reed inside, maybe. So left guard, you're looking at Luke Campbell. You're looking at J.D. Duplain. Nick Samak can play center or guard. But those other 4, I think, are going to be hard to beat, even though there's a new coach coming in. And every time there's a new coach, things can get jostled around, and someone can come out of nowhere. And somebody who's had a regular role sometimes can lose a role when the new coach comes in. But I think those guys are pretty steady. Would like to see Luke Campbell stay healthy to see what he can be in his final year. Like to see those guys on the field because they got a chance to be a decent offensive line, I think. Because individually, they've all had their moments. They just need to get it all intertwined together. Mr. Boneman, wow, Texas losing legacy to Bama, but those blue bloods are not going to put up with that much longer. Correct? Those people at Texas. And, Herman was a big-time hire. He was the genius. MSU fan number 1 says, who will start at fullback? Will we wear different uniforms for every game? I don't think different uniforms for every game. I suspect we're going to see the gruff Sparty on the helmet once this year if there's football. Why? Well, there's been a little bit of, rumblings, a little bit of buzz, a little bit of vibe about that gruff Sparty. And Mel Tucker out of nowhere tweeted one day, what do you guys think about gruff Sparty? Or was that on Instagram? I forget which. But for Mel Tucker to mention that on social media, he didn't come up with that out of nowhere. Then I was at Dick's Sporting Goods the other day in Okemos, and they've got their Michigan State display. Quite a display, by the way. It's all green. There's no maize in there. And I was in there with a visitor the other day, and they noticed that. There's no Michigan stuff here at all. Anyway, there's a few things, but not in that area. And at the checkout, there's a bunch of Michigan State stuff, flags and stuff, and then a little Michigan one down to the bottom right corner. Interesting. Anyway, so at the display, the Nike display there at Dick's Sporting Goods, one of the items on display, MSU hoodie with Gruff Sparty in the middle. Nothing but Gruff Sparty, green hoodie. And there's only like 3 or 4 hoodies to choose from. And that's a Nike one. And you can tell that's a major rollout for this year, is the Nike Gruff Sparty hoodie at Dick's Sporting Goods. And in general in other places. With Tucker saying that, and when you see something like that in the stores, that's not an accident. Things get put in motion early. Put that on a helmet, maybe for a game in September or October. Then you sell more hoodies. No accident. But I don't think they'll change uniforms every single week. Who will start at fullback? They won't have a starter at fullback. They won't use a fullback. They'll go H-back, tight end, offset off the line of scrimmage a little bit. Sometimes inside of the tackle, into the B gap between the guard and the tackle, which, Michigan State used to do with D'Antonio a little bit also. But it's going to be single running back, 1 tight end, and receivers. Sometimes 2 tight ends, sometimes a tight end and an H. But from what I've seen, you won't see I formation fullback, blocking back type of guy. There'll be blocking backs, goal line situations. They'll go under center once in a while, but it'll be that H move guy, and that'll be any of the tight end people. Including the walk-on. Who was the walk-on last year? There was an H that used to be. He got hurt in the bowl game. But, dude, I'm vacation mode with my brain. But now you know the secret. I actually like this all the time. Sorry. Can't remember names like I used to. But I can tell you about the 1983 middleweight division, the top 10 rankings in Ring Magazine. I can remember that right now. You'd have like Curtis Parker, Wilford Scipion, John the Beast Mugabe. I'm not going to go through all that. But I can't tell you who the fullback is. What's his name? Walk on. Anyway, I should have a cheat sheet here, but I don't have one. I could look it up. I could go right over there and get a page and figure it out, but someone else will mention. Anyway, he's the most fullback-like type guy. I'll go look for it in a minute if you want. All right, Hayden Fisher, a beautiful time to visit campus. That is true. And August is good, but June is a great time to visit campus. And that's when Michigan State Big Ten schools do a good job getting people on campus. Max Rosenthal, thanks, Hayden. Max Rosenthal is the fullback walk-on guy. Got hurt in the bowl game. Solid player. Fullback type of guy. He's made the transition to H-back. Made that transition last year when Salem was the offensive coordinator when they basically got rid of the fullback position. Anyway, during the summer camp season, that's a great time for Michigan State to have people on campus. The athletic complex is just it's vibrant and it's warm and it's just it's impressive to camp visitors. Of course, other campuses are impressive also. But a couple years ago, when the NCAA started to allow official visits in the summer, was a big opportunity for Big Ten schools, especially Michigan State, to get a chance to bring someone up from Florida or Georgia in June, to see Michigan State in June. That was never an opportunity before. In the past, if someone came up in June to visit, they had to pay their own way. Big difference to enable official visits in the summer at a place like East Lansing, Michigan. This summer, can't do it. Even if you're talking a guy from New Jersey, it's not real easy to get here from New Jersey either. Official visit from New Jersey in June would have been nice. Now Michigan State's trying to recruit a little bit in Texas and California, get those guys on official visits this time of year. Just got to get back to normal. Let's see, what other questions do we have here. Smack that like. The more likes, the higher the chance we beat Michigan. Okay. MSU fan saying that. Appreciate that. Appreciate the support. Chris Jennings says, it sucks that Michigan State did not get the wide receiver from East Lansing, but hope they can get another good wide receiver. I think Michigan State's got room for one wide receiver this year. Recruited really well at wide receiver last year. So they needed one. Anthony's the guy they went after. He grew up a Michigan fan. That was really not revealed a whole lot during the recruiting process. He was a Michigan fan. Harbaugh came and watched him. That went a long way with him. Then Michigan State out-hustled Michigan there for a while. Michigan came back and got him at the end. And you want the truth? You want to know what I really think? I think Michigan wanted to get him because they wanted to put a dent into Michigan State. They like Anthony, and they just reading the hieroglyphics here, just reading the tea leaves here. Looks to me like Michigan had a war room meeting about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, and decided, do we want to go get Andrell Anthony? I think we can get him. He wants to be a Wolverine. Do we want to get him? And they probably had a pros and cons list because they had tapped the brakes a little bit because they've gotten some good receivers this year. The tea leaves look to me like they had a war room meeting and decided, you know what? Let's go get him because we'll get him. Pretty good player. Maybe he'll turn out. Michigan State doesn't get him. Make Michigan State look bad. You don't think they think like that? I guarantee they think like that. What was it last year? Remember when Michigan beat Michigan State last year? Shea Patterson was on a radio show in Detroit. It might have been the Jamie Samuelson show with Stoney. Condolences to the Samuelson family, by the way. And there was a question coming up about Jamie Samuelson, sports broadcaster in the state of Michigan. There was a question here in the mailbag. Someone asked me if I ever met him, and I'll get to that later, but since it came up. Yeah, I met him once. He was on campus for maybe a Michigan State Northwestern game because he was a Northwestern graduate. And I met him in the parking lot at Breslin Center. Ironically, he was with Greg Henson at the time when Greg Henson was still around. It's the only time I've ever met Greg Henson, and that went really well too. Greg, a lot of you, as you know, has given Michigan State a hard time over the years, but it's part of the business. Whatever. It was nice to meet them, and Jamie, yeah, he was very nice. I did not know him as well as others do, but man, there's been an outpouring of support for him. So many people thought so highly of him, and good broadcaster. And too much information, but last Monday when he came out with a statement about people need to get things checked out at a certain age, I listened to that, and when I saw the news, that is on my list. I'm going to do that, and I'll do that because he said we should, and we should at this age. Talking about colonoscopies. A friend of mine, Jeff Zilgett's battling that too. Great writer for USA Today, covers NBA. I saw him in D.C. He's in Washington, D.C. Saw him when Michigan State was playing Duke in the regionals a year ago. And he told me the same thing. Jim, at your age, you got to get it checked out. I'm going to do it for Zilgett and for Jamie because if I don't, I'm cheating them. I got, supposedly right now, I'm hoping a clean bill of health. Haven't had it checked out yet. I owe it to them to go do it because they said to do it, so we're going to do it. And you should too if you're of that age. They're saying 45 now is the year you should do it. 45 years of age. Anyway, can't remember how I got onto that. Anyway, I was talking about Michigan. So anyway, on the Jamie show, I think it was Jamie and Stoney. Shea Patterson was on after Michigan beat Michigan State, and the quote he had on that show, Shea Patterson said, "We wanted it to sting a little bit. We wanted it to sting a little bit." beating Michigan State. And they thumped Michigan State, beat them bad. Michigan was a good team last year. Michigan State wasn't. They won. When they won the year before, I mean, was that the year before? I mean, they acted like they hadn't done it in a long time. They really celebrated quite a bit. I know Michigan State celebrates when they beat Michigan too. But the quote, "We wanted it to sting a little bit," that's not coming from Shea Patterson. That's coming from someone else telling them that they can act like that. And if you look at what happened on Twitter last year when Michigan beat Michigan State, I've never seen a team in a national sport, and college football is a national sport, and there's only 6 national sports: NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, NBA, college football, college basketball. There's 6 national sports. I've never seen a team in any of the national sports since the advent of Twitter gloat as much in social media and on Twitter as Michigan did after they beat Michigan State last year. Why? Because they wanted to sting a little bit. Why do they care? I don't know. It did sting. That's fine. They can do that. I'm not sure what kind of message that sends to the youngsters around the state of Michigan that are on social media and very impressionable. I don't think that's very healthy. Not my call. But they wanted to sting a little bit. They did that. That's the mindset. And I think that's the mindset that Michigan carried in going and getting Andrell Anthony. I think that's part they wanted to sting a little bit. So Andrell goes there. Maybe he'll do well. Maybe he'll get lost in the shuffle. I'm not sure. Maybe they told him he could major in business and they won't let him major in business. I don't know. I don't know what they told him that he could major in. But anyway, I wish him well. He's a good kid and a good athlete. Michigan State wishes they would have gotten him. Good player. We'll see how things go with him at Michigan. So let's stick here a little bit. Am I going? Is that too much of a tangent? Can you people handle that? Old Tuck probably likes that, but hey, I'm just telling you what I think. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong on that stuff. It's fine. Let's see. Marlon Dawson, outside linebacker from Oak Park, committed to Miami of Ohio. Have you heard of the staff reaching out to Marlon Dawson? No, I've not. That's an interesting one. 6'4" outside linebacker. I'll have to look into that one. Thanks a lot. A couple more here, then we'll go back to the mailbag. Tyler Miller. Com, did you read the Detroit News article on Payne's recruitment and the Belleville coach with Michigan? Does that help with Michigan State recruiting in the future? That was the Detroit Free Press. You're right. Yeah, I read that. I don't know. I think it probably stands to patch up the Belleville Michigan schism, whatever's going on there with Crowell and Harbaugh. And Crowell has had a couple tweets that he was not happy with some things, former players of his that have been at Michigan. What happened there, I think the elephant in the room on that whole thing is Alabama. And that article really made Alabama sound great, didn't it? There's players that Izzo and Beeline have not recruited because they didn't think they could get them for various reasons. I don't know if that was the case with this one, but to me, that's the elephant in the room. Alabama SEC recruiting practices. I don't know. I don't know the reasons, but he's a darn good defensive tackle prospect. Let's go. Let's see. All right, Jeremy from Hazlitt says, basketball, who starts at center in game 1 in basketball, assuming there's a basketball season for Michigan State? Who starts at center? Who starts at the 5? I'm going to say Bingham. I'm thinking he's a 5. Played some good defense last year against Coburn. Has to fill out more. Everybody knows that. Offensively, he plays more like a face-up guy. That shot, it looks good in practice sometimes, but not enough to be a perpetual part of the offense. Needs to develop some low post game. Will he ever? I don't know, but I think he starts at the 5. Bingham started 16 games last year at the 4. They didn't have a 4 most of the year. Tillman's now Hauser's going to be the 4, or Malik Hall. Can Hauser and Hall start together? I don't know. They're both going to be good players. I like Malik Hall a lot, but if Hauser and Hall are on the floor together and you're playing Illinois, can either of them guard a guy like Coburn? I don't know. Michigan's got a pretty good big men. There's other good big men in the Big Ten. Last year, there were a lot of good big men in the Big Ten, more so than most around the country in this age of positionless basketball, or attempts at positionless basketball. But I think Bingham starts. He started 16 games last year for a reason. Sometimes, who starts, sometimes it can get a little bit, I don't want to say political, but who starts a game could sometimes be a little bit superficial for the outside noise. Sometimes you might start the guy that you're most worried about losing to the transfer portal, believe it or not. So you could say, well, Marcus, you started 20 games this year, or whatever. Bingham's a good guy, likes being here, but you just never know about that transfer situation with anybody. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's a factor sometimes in who gets the start. It just is. So I think Bingham starts with Hauser next year in the front court to begin with, game number 1. I don't know if they finish games that way. I don't know if that's the starting lineup in March. All right, he also says, in general, what's your favorite sport? Which favorite sport returning league? What's your favorite sport among the returning leagues? NHL, MLB, PLL, or NBA? PLL, is that lacrosse? It wouldn't be lacrosse. I've gotten a kick out of some of these NBA games. I think that they're doing a pretty good job with the telecast. MLB, it's baseball for me. I love the sport. I love to watch the intricacies. The batting. Do they take the flashlight knob to the catcher? Does the front knee get locked? Does the heel plant? Do the hips go before the shoulders? If I happen to be watching a game, I'll rewind each. Castellanos getting the back hip on the load to the pitcher, the back pocket. Things that you hear about and you see clinics and you see those guys do it and you try to teach it to 15-year-olds, those things. The pitching, where does the toe go? Where's the glove go? A lot of those things. So it's not just as a fan. I'm looking at some of those things and I find a lot of those things fascinating. But it's baseball for me, MLB among the things that are back on TV now because it's summer. It's baseball season. I like the NBA. I like the NHL a lot. I was watching the Wild against the Canucks last night, and I enjoyed it. And some of the camera angles were a little tighter with the pushing and shoving. You get more of the lip reading and the trash talk and the true animosity from bench to bench that I'd never seen before in an NHL game. I mean, we see NHL games where there's fisticuffs and differences of opinion and good little scraps, but we don't get to see a lot of the as much jawing beforehand as I saw last night. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But I'm going to go with baseball to answer your question. That's my favorite one returning right now. C. Snook from Parts Unknown says, do you have any word on the players and staff who tested positive for the coronavirus? Apart from its effect on the season, I'd really just like to know that everyone is doing okay. I've not heard how they're doing. No news is probably good news there. And like I said earlier, I am hearing that that you might see someone opt out in the coming days. All right. What do we have here? Ronnie M. from Grosse Ile, Michigan. He says Grosse Ile is still the Maui of the Midwest. Good for Grosse Ile. What is your forecast for Tillman in the NBA and his career? What are his projected strengths and weaknesses vis-a-vis the pro game? Is there a position or role in that game for which he is a natural fit? I'm not an expert on NBA and how rosters are constructed these days, but you're talking about a guy that on defense has guarded Zion Williamson in college. That defensive versatility combined with some physical strength can help him stay on the court, cover some ground, and he can play defense like a Draymond Green or better in some ways. Post defense is not needed all that much in the NBA these days. You don't see many post entry feeds. But Xavier Tillman needs to develop that range jumper, and if he does, he'll stick in the league and have a real nice career. He's a long way toward getting there already. Question number 9, Cherry Lane says, Cherry Lane is now in Grand Rapids. It's a good question here. He says, has Izzo ever had a lefty point guard before? And he says, will the team reverse some sets or make other changes if Jaden Aikens joins the Spartans? Jaden Aikens is left-handed. Projects to be a lead guard, point guard at some point. That is a great question. I don't think he's had a left-handed point guard. And yes, it could change things. And if I see Izzo anytime, I haven't seen him in a long time, I would ask him that. And if he's talking about Jaden, he wouldn't be able to answer on the record. But yes, I think it would mirror flip some of the sets. For years, when Michigan State gets into their shot clock play, it's ball screen, it's a right-handed dribble with a screen at the top of the key. Back when Cleaves was doing it, and Caitlin Lucas, especially Cleaves, that top of the key ball screen at the shot clock was usually more over toward the hash mark in the left wing area, more so than top of the key. And they used to do that with, the Drew Neitzel era a lot also, because you're getting that screen at the hash mark, and you've got a right-handed dribble toward the top of the key, threatening the free throw line to turn the corner and penetrate with a right-handed dominant hand dribble. It stands to figure that with Aikens, they'd do it on the left side and give him a left-handed dominant dribble to get into the lane that way. That's a great question. I hadn't thought of that. Cherry Lane with the question of the night. I'm gonna ring the bell for Cherry Lane. And Cherry Lane, I looked it up. He's been a subscriber to SpartanMag.com since February of this year, and he's only had 9 posts. Only 9 posts. Cherry Lane. I love the apartment complex. I love the Cherry Lane laundromat. I used to go there when I was at Holton Hall back in the 1980s. Cherry Lane, you got to post more. Only 9 posts in February. Great question. And I think they would. I don't know for a fact that they would, but I suspect they would change their shot clock play to be a left-handed dribble drive. And if they don't, that'd be a mistake. What would that be like? I can think of some other mistakes Michigan State has made along those lines. Like Miles Bridges was always operating on the right wing, and he got into an awful rut. Was it his second year or his first year? Where his second year, because he was always trying to drive and get to the free throw line, because that's what the coaches told him he should try to do more. And he would like jab or fake and drive to the baseline like every time. And when they lost to Michigan, Michigan didn't come out and say it, but there were strong indications that Michigan felt that they knew how to guard him and what he would do. He'd guard the baseline, close him off there. But anyway, I don't know if with the strong hand, if that played into that or not. I know there was one strong hand thing that I thought they missed on years ago. But Michigan State corrected that with Bridges, with Garland, with some self-scouting, and changed that for later in the year. The way preventing Bridges from being so predictable on what he was doing from the right wing. All right. Jay from the D says, do you have any indication on if Jay Johnson and Mel Tucker are going to be like D'Antonio and play the hot hand at running back during a game, or will they spread the wealth more within a game, even if one guy has it rolling? Thanks and keep up the good work. I texted my friend Artie Mangum about that question because his son, Jaron Mangum, plays at Colorado at running back. They had a different running back coach last year, and he would have a feel for that. And I didn't get a text back from him in the meantime. So I'll probably revisit that question at the Underground Bunker message board later. But I think most coaches are of the hot hand type, giving everybody a little bit of a dabble in the first half and then going with a hot hand. I think that's what they'll probably do. Almost ready to wrap up these questions, then we'll go. Question number 11 from MSU Spartan out of New Hudson, Michigan. It says, assuming football is canceled, what do you expect will happen to most of the seniors? And he was the guy that asked me about Jamie Samuelson, and I talked about that earlier. Assuming football is canceled, what do you expect will happen to most of the seniors? Well, if it's anything like last spring, the NCAA will give all of them an extra year of eligibility to come back next year. Will the NCAA be the governing body of these colleges next year? There are a lot of conversations going on right now. We've been hearing the last couple of days that if the NCAA announces that they are not going to be holding fall championships in fall sports, there's rumblings that the Power 5 conferences will go ahead and hold their own championships, talking about, volleyball, cross country type of thing. If they do that, that'll be the first step and maybe the step toward the Power 5 breaking from the NCAA, which would turn the NCAA tournament in the spring on its ear, and we would never see the NCAA basketball tournament the same again. If that happens and they break from the NCAA, you'll never see a Loyola of Chicago run, VCU, George Mason, Middle Tennessee State, Maryland, Baltimore County. Those amazing upsets, which provide the intrigue and mystery and the fabric of the NCAA tournament, will be lost if the Power 5 leaves the NCAA. Power 5 can make more money that way. The top 65 schools in the country, including Michigan State, will benefit. It's an autonomous 5 right now. We've seen that more and more the last couple of years. 5 conferences. It's just another step toward professionalism, and I know it's already professional sports, but it just would become more and more like the NFL and NBA, which is okay, but I don't know, maybe I'm the old guy yelling at the clouds. I don't think that'd be positive. What would we get out of it as fans if the Power 5 separated from those schools for basketball? If they did it for football, would that get rid of all mid-major games in September? Maybe you would have better, more competitive games in September instead of playing Central Michigan, Western Michigan, Toledo, and Jacksonville State. You would see more games against Missouri, Wake Forest, Boston College. You'd also see more losses, and probably more coach firings, but that's not our problem, is it? So I'm assuming the seniors would be given another year by the NCAA, but I'm not sure NCAA will be in charge of that at that point. I'm guessing they'll get, if the Power 5 breaks off, I'm guessing they might emulate what the NCAA did with last spring's athletes and give them an extra year of eligibility if they want it. I think at Wisconsin, they're not giving them an extra year. They're like, thanks for your service, you're gone. Wisconsin, very successful athletic department, very much a cheapskate athletic department. And maybe I tip my hat to them for that way, for their frugality. But if the football players lose this season, will seniors like Jordan Reed be allowed, and Antoine Simmons be allowed to come back next year for a senior season? Some of them probably won't want to. They'll want to go straight to the draft because it's their year to draft, so they'll probably just go on and go out. That's a lot different than a softball player who doesn't really have a draft to look forward to. So a lot of them will be gone. Some of them, I think, will have the open door to come back. But remember, these athletic departments, if they lose football this year and no cash flow, there will be a lot of cash-strapped athletic departments. And these athletic departments pay those scholarships. It's not like you're on scholarship and no money changes hands. If you're a football player on scholarship, the athletic department writes that $20,000 check or whatever it is for the year, and it goes to the university. They pay for all 85 scholarships. If you're bringing back your seniors the following year, the ones that don't get drafted, instead of having 85 on scholarship, now you've got 95 on scholarship. Now you're paying 10 more at a time when you're cash strapped. There will be some athletic departments that are like, seniors, thanks, but you got to move on. We can't pay for you to be here. So my guess is if it's canceled, the governing body, whichever one it is, will allow those players to come back. But there will be some athletic departments that won't be able to pay for them to come back. Last question. Spartan Law says, have the coaches and players been able to conduct any football-related activities and meetings while in quarantine? For example, Zoom calls. Yeah, they did that all spring and into the summer. And here in the last 2 weeks, when they've renewed the 14-day quarantine, and I think that might be what you're talking about, is the most recent quarantine period. Have they been able to do Zoom calls during that time? Yes, they have. And they resumed, no pun intended, that installation, learning more and more about the X's and O's. And I have heard from other coaches that those have been worthwhile. I heard Herm Edwards, the head coach at Arizona State, talking about how much they've been able to get out of the extra meeting time that they normally don't have. And he thinks there might be, players more mentally ready than usual. Michigan State certainly needs that because they've not been able to get on the field in forever. Getting ready to lose my voice here, so we got to shut this one down. There were 5 or 6 more questions over the underground bunker. I won't get to those tonight. Next time, maybe I will. Thanks for those of you that posted. Gordon Tenona says, I read to go to IMG. It costs $82,000 per year. Do the players get sponsors? Yes, they do. And, there's some players that get scholarships, invitations, and then there's other players whose parents are dying for their kids to play on that stage and maybe get noticed that are willing to pay that money. I never heard that it was $82,000 a year. I mean, Harvard's not $82,000 a year. But if you read that, I don't know. I'm not saying that's wrong, but yeah, there's some that paid to be there that pay the freight, and then there's a few that they recruit in. Mr. Boneman says, do you think the lack of knowing who the starting quarterback is hurting them with some of these big-time wide receivers? Not yet. Not yet, because, I mean, if Michigan State had an established, awesome freshman quarterback, it would certainly help. But I don't think Michigan has that. And some of these other programs don't either. Hayden Fisher, let's see. All right. Chris Jennings says, when the news says a number of athletes test positive, why won't they mention what sports do the athletes play on? It's a good question. Michigan State's been very much transparent with these tests, more so than a lot of other schools. Last week when they announced, 14 positives, I did ask if any of the other sports were in quarantine. Men's basketball, women's basketball, volleyball, and hockey. All those teams are on campus and working out. Michigan State football had 1 positive and a staff member positive, and they paused. And then 2 days later, 14 positives. So they paused on 1 and 1. So I asked if the other sports had quarantined, and the answer was no. So I'm guessing by the math last year, there was either 0 or very little positive tests with the other sports. Why do they not do it? It's a good question. I don't have a good answer for that. They're being transparent, but they also want other things to remain private for medical privacy reasons. I'm not sure. Old Tuck's sinkers are hanging out on the cement with the heat down south. He's down in Texas. Old Tuck is. Drippy says, I'm going to be honest, I'd rather have no season than go 3-7. Getting back to my soliloquy from a little while ago. All right. Drippy says, I wonder what the tailgating rules will be. I don't think there's going to be tailgating because there's not going to be players in the stands. There's NASCAR races this weekend at MIS in Michigan, International Speedway. And there's some places where you can kind of see the track. Well, I don't know if you can or not. I drove by there once taking my kid to a soccer game a couple years ago. We stopped by and looked at the track. We were out there in turn 2, and you could see the track from there. Probably on race day, you can't get that close. But there'll be some people out there just to listen to it probably. Mr. Boneman says, prayers out to the family of Jamie Samuelson from 97.1 who passed away on Sunday. Absolutely. Like I said earlier, so many people say so many great things about him. Detroit Sports Radio is going to miss him, that's for sure. I regret that I only met him once, and he was outstanding when I met him. But saying no tailgating, I would agree with that. Ms. Linsky prediction. Coin flip. No inside information on that. Michigan State, Texas look like the final 2. Like I said earlier, I don't remember Michigan State ever battling Texas for a recruit down to the wire. Maybe it happened in the 60s, back in the Duffy Daugherty era. I'm not sure. I can't remember a player ever visiting Michigan State and Texas. I'm sure that's happened in the last 25 years, but I can't think of one guy that's like down to Michigan State and Texas. That's an odd pairing and a difficult one to win if you're Michigan State. In this case, State's got an in with him with his dad, so we'll stay tuned on that one. Hayden Fisher says, what do you think opting out would do to their scholarship? If they opt out, they keep their scholarship. Because I think it's been made clear to athletes, I think at Michigan State, and I think nationwide by the NCAA, although I don't know how the NCAA could mandate this. But I think Michigan State said, yeah, I think in their initial releases on this, they said if someone doesn't want to play, they will remain on scholarship. So opting out, they'll remain on scholarship. Hayden Fisher says, good observation, but I bought that Nike hoodie last fall. I hope they do roll it out. I do roll out the Gruff Sparty. I didn't realize that Gruff Sparty hoodie was out last year. I know you can always buy it. Now, Hayden Fisher, you need to clarify this. Did you buy it like it was a Nike one last year? Did you buy it like on Fanatics or on a website? Or did you buy it retail at something like Dick's Sporting Goods? To me, if it's on shelf space at a Dick's Sporting Goods, that carries a little more weight, a little more promotional branding. Okay, Hayden Fisher says he believes he got it at Dick's or SBS. Okay, I stand corrected on that. Then that hoodie was around last year. I didn't see it last year. So that stuff I was saying about Gruff Sparty about a half hour ago, never mind. Never mind, to quote Rosanna Dana. Those of you of a certain age. Or was that Emily Latella? Those were characters by Gilda Radner, Saturday Night Live, circa 1980. All right, Drippy, they leaked black market helmets too. Okay, the black market helmet, the black helmets, not black market helmets, black helmets. Yeah, I think black helmets is going to happen. A lot of indications there. No inside information. All right, Mr. Bowman says, how are the MUN updates going? You know, I took a picture of the MUN updates. When was I over there? A week or so ago? They look good. I mean, it changes the look of that whole thing. It's like a big awning coming out toward MUN Field. I should post those. Mr. Boneman, remind me on the Underground Bunker message board. I'll look to post those. Looks good. And I'm sure that whatever they have there that's going to be their version of the Hall of History will be outstanding. And it'll be, it will well serve the history of Michigan State hockey for recruits coming in, so they'll know that it's special, because recruits that have come through MUN for the last 15 years haven't gotten much of an indication that hockey was as special at Michigan State as it used to be, or that it can be or will be again. But the Hall of History will be a great billboard for those recruits, as will be their own weight room. Right now, hockey players use Breslin, and they've used football also, have their own weight room. And also the locker rooms, player lounge, and offices go above ground. I think now they'll have more expansive offices, because everything at MUN, the locker rooms, the lounge area, the offices, they were all below ground, so they could never expand out from there. They could never knock down a wall and make an office bigger. So they've been confined to 1975 type of dimensions for a long time down there. And the program is bigger, stronger, better than that, and now this will help with that. It'll help recruiting. So it's looking good. And it'll help when you go to a hockey game, walking in through there, you'll feel even more and more like you're at an event. And I tell you what, the atmosphere there at MUN, it's not been rocking as it used to be, but last year there were a few games when it did get nice and loud. But just going to a game there, I love going to a game there. I cover some games there, but I also go just as an observer. I'll go over to maybe the Harrison Roadhouse, have some onion soup, maybe some refreshments, walk there from the Harrison Roadhouse. It's perfect if there's snow flurries, like a January game, walking along the river, trees. Or I like parking at IM West and walking over there in front of Dem Hall. And you know all those pines? I think they're white pines. You know, the pines, there's a sign there that says all those pines were planted in 1910 as some experiment about soil erosion. So they put those pines in there to see if they could keep the sand there, because sand had been blowing off campus a lot. So those were all planted there. Now those pines just offer a great backdrop or front drop to the rink when you're going to the rink. There's something about walking through trees to go to a rink, because to me, hockey is an outdoor game. In its natural habitat, it's a frozen pond with trees and sky. That's hockey to me. So walking in the winter through the trees to a rink is something you don't get at many arenas. Think about it. Can you go to an NHL rink and walk through trees to get there? I mean, I love going through those trees. I think that's great. Now, if you enter from the other side, you'll be coming through the new Hall of History, which is going to be awesome also. You walk in, you're at eye level is the new scoreboard that went up, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, the video scoreboard. When you walk in, that is at eye level, and it's big, and it's impressive. National championship banners. It's a cool place. Now it's all seat backs, almost, is it 90% seat backs or all seat backs? I don't think the student section is seat backs. That's made it more comfortable. It's a great place. And last year there was 1 or 2 games, maybe one game last year when it was a top 10 game, both teams in the top 10. That's what we need to see, more games where both teams are top 10. And that's going to be a great product to go check out. Jesse Adams says, this is Jesse from Mount Pleasant, do you think we will see Dotson and Gillison on the field at the same time in some packages? If so, do you like those two as a 1-2 punch at tight end, even though Dotson is coming back from the injury? Yeah, Dotson's coming back from that, was it knee or Achilles? I think Achilles. And Gillison had a nice play in the bowl game. Yeah, they'll be on the field together because Jay Johnson believes in 2 tight end packages. You'll see that, judging by last year, you'll see 2 tight end packages 10, 12, 15 times a game. Maybe more depending on the weakness of an opponent. Maybe less depending on the strength of an opponent. Gillison and Dotson are the 2 best tight ends. So, yeah, they'll be on the field together. Parks Kissinger got on the field a little bit in the bowl game. Does he stay at tight end? I think so. I think he's got a chance to be a decent blocker. And then the other guy, the pitcher, Adam Burghorst. How about that athlete? He'll get on the field a year in the weight room. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a good move as a tight end. So, yeah, Dotson and Gillison, you'll see them on the field together. I'm not sure those are the 2 best blocking tight ends. So if they're on the field together, at least one of them is probably going to be threatening to seam deep, not to tip off anything. So if your question is, could we see 2 tight ends on the field together? Definitely. Is Dotson-Gillison the best tandem? I think you would maybe want one of those and then another guy that was more of a blocking-oriented guy. Rosenthal figures in there also. But, yeah, I mean, they'd like to get it on the field and take a look at it. I mean, if they've not seen their own guys, they have not seen their own guys in pads yet, much less with a football. They would love to see what those guys have. All they've got to go by is last year's game film, last year's practice film. I'm sure they've drawn that up. I'm sure that's in the plans. But right now, they don't know what it looks like. And it's the week of August 3rd. All right. Hayden Fisher says, absolutely. I think that's what happened. No other reason for them to turn on the heat in the last 2 weeks. Talking about Michigan coming after Andrell Anthony at the end. I think it was all about being a paper program. It's fine. I've got other thoughts about that, but I don't want to disrespect Andrell Anthony. He's a teenager, good athlete. He's a better football player right now than I'll ever be at anything. But Michigan and they like their recruiting rankings, and they need more grit in that program. They've had too many people come to that program. And they've been good, not as good as they can be. They need more team-oriented, gritty guys. That's what I think. Anyway, Mr. Bowman, me too. I'll be talking to my doctor soon, talking about colonoscopy if you're 50, 45. Cameron Triggs, what's your top 3 Big Ten basketball teams for 2021? Ooh, that's a good one. With Livers going back to Michigan, that helps them a lot. I think State's going to be in there. Garza and Iowa, coming back to Iowa. I've not really studied it yet. I've not studied it yet. I've got no good answer for that, so I would love to hear what you think, Cameron Triggs. Cameron Triggs says, do we have an extra scholarship open with Tillman leaving, and could we pick up a transfer before the season starts? Yes, Michigan State could, but it's late. I mean, school's supposed to start in 2 or 3 weeks, so I don't think that's happening. It's so odd and rare for players to make NBA decisions this close to the beginning of the school year. Jesse Adams says, do you think we could see Luke Fulton get any playing time this year? Inside linebacker? Yes, I do. We saw him a little bit in the green-white game 14, 15 months ago. He was maybe I'm getting him mixed up with Ed Warner the year before, who was a mid-year enrollee. Heard some pretty good things about Fulton, but yeah, playing time. I think Fulton could be at least a special teams guy. Liked him coming out of high school. Excuse me, didn't hear anything bad about him. But we didn't hear a lot of, we're not hearing much about progress reports on players because they didn't have spring practice. The coaches haven't seen progress, so they can't really relay things to us. But yeah, Luke Fulton is a guy that's going to be second string. And second string inside linebackers invariably seem to find their way to the field out of necessity. And he's going to be right in there. They're going to need that from him. Cameron Triggs, what's your prediction for Michigan State's basketball 2021 starting lineup and sixth man? I went through the starting lineup earlier. I think you have Hauser and Bingham starting in the front court. I think you got Watts, Henry, and Gabe Brown. You might say, well, Henry and Brown are both kind of tall, kind of wing forwards. Neither one of them is really a guard. But I think they can work on their ball handling and maybe make that work. If not, Joshua Langford, possibly, if he's healthy. Malik Hall, could he play a perimeter position? I think he could play the 4 and the 3. As Michigan State brings in, you've got Julius Marble, got Matty Sissoko, got Thomas Kithier. So it's getting a little crowded. You have 5 guys there that could play front court. Malik Hall would be a 6th. Could you get him 10 minutes a game as an athletic 4, 10 minutes a game as a wing? Possibly. But I think your starters are Watts, Brown, Aaron Henry, Hauser, and Bingham, because I'm not saying you finished games with Bingham, but like I say, he started 16 games last year for a reason. I think against some teams, Kithier might be a guy that can really help. Some teams, Malik Hall. If you can go smallish with 2 stretch 4s in Hall and Hauser, how can they play together? Can they complement one another? That'd be a good question. If Hall and Hauser can complement one another, that's your most talented bookend offensively. But do they get hurt at the other end against some teams in the Big Ten? Don't know. Ty Garland checking in late. Garland, late. Perlis told you always arrive 15 minutes early. Always arrive 15 minutes early. You know George taught you that. It's all right. It's all right. I know you guys are busy. I'm just joking with you. Gordon Denona checking back in, $68,000 a year at IMG. That's still more than Harvard, I think. It's crazy. All right, that's going to wrap it up. That's all the questions for this week's edition of Spartan Mag Live. Thanks to those of you that came and checked us out. Thanks for the thumbs up. Thanks for subscribing. If you're not a subscriber to SpartanMag.com, head over to SpartanMag.com. Check out, see what's going on. We talk about recruiting all day, every day. Recruiting. We have podcasts, other stuff. We'll have a recruiting wrap pretty soon. We were going to have one last week. Then the Andrell Anthony thing hit, and Corey and I decided not to do one because that thing was changing by the minute. We didn't want to have a podcast, and by the time we were done with the podcast, when it was 3 hours old, it might have already been bad shelf life, so we didn't do a recruiting wrap. But we almost did last week. We'll do another one soon. Thanks for checking us out. Go to SpartanMag.com. Jim Comporty, SpartanMag.com, saying thanks for checking us out. We'll see you next time right here, Spartan Mag Live.